of The New Rules of Aging Well, which is an excellent book, especially for people that are confused with how to be healthy. Where do you start? Because there's so much conflicting information. And I think you really did a good job of covering so many different facets of overall health and fitness in only about, 145 pages?
Yeah, I mean, this is my modus operandi, is trying to take information, especially complicated information, make it simple for people and present it in sort of bite-sized bits so people can absorb it. There's just so much going on. So people find reading books very difficult now. So I try to take the information and make it simple and digestible for people.
Right. Let's get into gut health, because that's one of the most important areas to cover. And one thing, people understand the importance of gut health on a superficial level, but I don't think people realize how deep it goes, meaning that there's a big connection between gut health and joint health. So why is that? Why is there a connection between those two?
So you need to see your gut as your internal skin. So if you think about your skin on the outside, your gut is in a way, there's a protective barrier that's protecting you from everything that you're putting into your mouth. Not only protecting you, but there's a whole ecosystem down there that's digesting and helping you absorb what you need and letting go of what you don't need. Right. And that internal skin is only 1 cell thick for a lot of it. Now, 1 cell thick is it's thinner than tissue paper. So you've got this very thin internal lining, which is your protective barrier against the outside world. And inside that gut, and with this very thin internal, this internal lining, is something called the microbiome, which is full of trillions and trillions of bacteria, which are, we all think of bacteria as bad guys and causing infections. But most of the bacteria and fungi and viruses that we have in our gut are actually are playing an important function for your health. So right. You have this ecosystem that often goes out of balance because of the way we eat, because of the drugs we take, because of all the crap in our food. And then you have that sort of surrounded by this very, very thin wall, which gets damaged quite easily, especially when your microbiome goes off. And then when that wall gets damaged, you have undigested food particles or metabolites of these bacteria or metabolites of food that go through this wall into your bloodstream, and then they can go anywhere, your skin, your joints, any part of your body. So your gut actually is probably the most important source of inflammation that people talk about inflammation all the time. The most important source, or most common source of inflammation in the body stems from the gut. And that's because you get damage to this lining, you get an imbalance of the microbiome, and then you get these toxic metabolites, breakdown products of food, or foods that you shouldn't be eating or are sensitive to, going through that lining into your bloodstream and triggering inflammation all over the body, the joints being one of those organs.
Right. It's often referred to as the second brain, the gut.
That's another aspect. So not only is there this gut microbiome and thin lining, but the gut is also, as you say, called the second brain. There are more neurotransmitters and brain chemicals made in your gut than they're made in your brain. So serotonin, which is like the happy chemical, there's more of that made in your gut, most of it actually made in your gut and not your brain. And there's this direct connection between the gut and the brain. So you have a lot of these breakdown products also going directly to the brain. So yes, there are more nerve endings in the gut. The gut's the second brain, and also over 70% of your immune system is either in or around your gut as well. So right. You have all these factors. You have this second brain where all these neurotransmitters are being made. You have this predominant part of your immune system in or around your gut. And you have this major ecosystem, which is affecting you in many ways, and which then affects this lining, which then affects which can affect the rest of your body. So it's a very, very important organ, and we just take it for granted, unfortunately.
Well, especially here in the Western world, especially even with COVID in full effect, we haven't seen a epidemic of people trying to get healthy. People are still eating a lot of junk food. People are still stress eating, and then that's making things worse. It's destroying your gut health.
Right. Well, I think what no one, or not no one, but what the system is not talking about is we have an epidemic of COVID superimposed on an epidemic of metabolic ill health.
Absolutely.
Why America is doing, there are many reasons why we're not doing well with COVID here. I mean, we can, the ones that everyone knows about, but the other part is people aren't particularly healthy here. And we know that COVID, people who have metabolic ill health or have diabetes or obesity, overweight, high sugar levels, all have poorer outcomes from COVID-19. So there's this epidemic of COVID-19 superimposed on this epidemic of ill health. And we're not talking enough of this epidemic. We're not talking enough about people being so unhealthy.
Right.
And part of the reason why we're having such poor outcomes is the two superimposed on each other.
No question. What can we do to improve the microbiome?
Right. So there are many things we can do. The first would be to decrease the amount of crap, in particular sugar and starches.
Right.
I mean, that is probably the most important thing. Just eat as close to nature as possible. Eat good food. Basically food that comes from nature tends to be healthy. So you want to eat proper whole foods. When you do that, you'll automatically decrease the sugar and the processed foods and the starchy foods. So that's number one. Number two is you should try avoid animal products that have been injected with hormones and antibiotics, which are most factory farmed animals. So if you are going to eat meat, I'm not against animal protein, but if you are going to eat animal protein, try and get grass-fed beef. Try and get buy chicken or eggs that are free range and foraging rather than factory farmed. Rather get organic chicken. So that would be a number two. Number three is we've got to watch all this. There are many drugs that can alter our microbiome. Antibiotics are the obvious ones. We go too quick. Sometimes we need antibiotics. I'm not against antibiotics, but as a culture, we go too quickly to use antibiotics, and most of the time they're unnecessary. And the other very common drug that's used that affects our microbiome are PPIs, protein pump inhibitors, the Nexiums, the Prilosec. So many people have heartburn because they're eating crap, and then they just, they have the symptom, they have heartburn, they take a drug, a Nexium, to suppress the symptom. Unfortunately, the Nexium is actually inhibiting natural acid production of the body, which your microbiome needs. So one of the major side effects of taking a PPI long term is an altered microbiome. So that has an effect. Another big issue that I don't think enough people talk about is glyphosate. I would imagine you and your audience know glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. And Roundup is most people know Roundup. It's a pesticide used on genetically modified organisms. But and glyphosate is the active ingredient. And glyphosate is also registered as an antibiotic. It's a registered antibiotic as well. And glyphosate is not only used on genetically modified organisms, it's used in America to dry many crops. So farmers use it to dry crops to get them out to when their harvest comes, when they're able to dry their crops quicker, they can get more crops out to the market quicker. So most grains, many beans are actually sprayed with glyphosate, not as a pesticide, but to dry them quicker, which is crazy. We also, another issue that may very well be important is what we do to our water. We chlorinate our water, which affects our microbiome as well. So there are a lot of things we do in the way we live, which affect our microbiome. And most important is the type of food we're eating.
What about people who like to swim a lot or use jacuzzis, right? So you're immersed in chlorine.
I don't think that's as much as an issue because it's more the chlorine that gets into the gut. That's not, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a healthy thing, but I don't think that's affecting the gut as much.
Yeah. It seems there's so many chemicals, environmental chemicals. There's so many toxins we're bombarded with on a daily basis. And even when you do the best you can, you pick organic food choices, you get the cleanest food, you buy locally. It seems that that's just diminishing the problem a little bit or lowering the problem a little bit, but you're still being bombarded with so much. Are there additional steps you can take for, I hate to use the word detox because it's just used so abundantly and often incorrectly, but are there things that additional measures we can take to help cleanse out all these environmental toxins?
Sure. So I think it's important to understand we do have natural detoxification mechanisms in our body, our liver and our gut, our lungs to a certain extent, our kidneys, but our liver and our gut are your main organs. But as you pointed out, we get overloaded with toxins because there are toxins everywhere in the air we're breathing, in the water, in the food, and it's overwhelming our natural detoxification systems.
Yeah.
So, what I always recommend is, first of all, you try eliminate as many toxins as possible from your skincare, from your cleaning products, from your water, from your food. But there are some nutrients that can actually assist your body's detoxification mechanism. There are some liver nutrients. There's so many liver formulas that, milk thistle, and the many formulas that can help with assisting, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, can help liver function. But most important is actually cleaning out the gut. And I hate the word cleaning out the gut, but your gut is, and as we talked about earlier, being a major source of inflammation. It's a major, if you have damage to your gut wall and an altered microbiome, a lot of those metabolites of the bacteria and toxins actually go through the gut wall and then go into your bloodstream and to your liver and overwhelm your liver. So cleaning out your gut is really important. So the first place, sorry?
So I'm sorry, what do you think about lemon juice or lime juice?
Yeah, that's fine. It can stimulate the liver a little bit. I have no problem with that, doing that first thing in the morning. I don't think it has a major effect, but yeah, I think it probably has somewhat of a positive effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things I like about your book, this is especially important for my audience that really enjoys intense physical training, is the importance of restoration. I often say that heavy weight training, sprinting, those adrenaline-based exercise activities, and you have to balance the adrenaline activities, restoration activities such as Tai Chi that you mentioned, Qigong, yoga, getting massages. How many people do you deal with, or how many of your clients are just exercise addicts like myself or my audience, where you have to really wheel them in and get them to prioritize restoration?
A fair number, I think. It is a problem, especially as you get older. I think, look, don't get me wrong. I think exercise is probably one of the most important things you can do for your aging process. So I'm all for exercise, but over-exercising, the good thing about exercise is a stress on your body, which is little stresses are actually very positive for, these stresses are actually have incredibly positive effects on your body and on the aging mechanisms. But when you push it too far, it can drain your body, and then you don't let your body recover. I'm sure if your audience are big exercisers, what happens, you exercise, you're breaking, muscle, let's say insertion sites, you're releasing fibers, and at night you need to sleep, that's when your body restores, and all that effect actually can start having a positive effect on your body. So not only do you need to sleep well, but you need to rest it as well, because if you keep triggering the inflammation, these small little bits of inflammation insertion points or in the muscles are good, but once you start overdoing it and you injure yourself, that becomes a problem, especially when you get older. When you get to I'm 66. When you get into your 50s and 60s, your body doesn't heal and recover as well. So you need to be sensitive to that, because you don't want to injure yourself, because once, like I screwed up my knee, for instance. So I adjusted my exercise. I don't run. I don't do anything where I pound on my knee. I ride my bike. You just got to adjust according to your body. And especially as you get older, I think it becomes more and more important to rest in between exercise and let your body recover. I think there's too much what I call yang exercise that we do in the West without the balance is a problem. I mean, it drains people. I've seen so many people come in here burnt out from just pushing themselves too much. Yeah. But there's a fine balance. I mean, I think not doing any exercise is really bad for you. So you've got to find that sweet spot, which most of us can do. It's not that difficult.
Right. And most people don't have the problem of exercising too much. They have the problem of being way too sedentary.
Absolutely. It's much more common not exercising enough. So it's easier to, if you're exercising too much, it's much easier to adapt. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pull the reins in. Now, the thing that concerns me about, because I love heavy weight training, but I'm always very concerned about the possible negative impact on joints when you push it too far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once your joints start wearing down, you're in a rapidly aging state.
Absolutely. So these are the things you need to be very aware of. And I've seen that over the years. For instance, I screwed up my knee playing soccer in my 20s, and because I never dealt with it properly, then I got an ankle issue, then I got a hip issue, and then because your body compensates. So let's say you pushing weights too much and you injure, let's say you injure your shoulder. Let's just use that as an example. What happens is your body will protect itself and start tightening some muscles around your shoulder. That will cause certain muscles around the shoulder not to fire properly. So you'll have to use other muscles to work harder. So you'll start using muscles down your arm, and you'll start getting a tennis elbow or pain down your arm, or you'll start getting neck pain. Your body compensates.
Yeah.
And so you've got to either work with a very good body worker who can help you with it, but you need to be very careful, because your body will adjust and compensate. And you may not even have pain, but over time, you're going to get imbalances and all sorts of problems. So, I think you need to start looking after yourself in your 30s, not wait till you're an old man like me.
Now, you're a big advocate of active release technique, and I'm a huge fan of that.
Absolutely. So that's when
20 years. Yeah, that stuff's as you were talking, it reminds me of how important it is when people have these aches and pains and they just ignore it. They go, let me just lie on the sofa all day today and kick back. That's not active restoration. That's just hoping it'll go away. Exactly. I mean, I had a really bad groin tear last year, and active release, I go to a really good active release technique practitioner here in Vegas, Dr. Booth. And he got me about 90% recovered in a couple weeks, where this injury, if I just sat around and waited for it to go away, it not only would have taken forever, but it wouldn't have healed properly.
I agree 100%. So that's what I was talking about, finding a good body. So as a general rule, I mean, active release technique practitioners are good, because not everyone, obviously you need to find someone good, because they're looking at the whole functioning of the body. So they're looking to see where weak areas are, and maybe that's why you tore that area. So they're working on all the areas around it. So I think, to me, that's critical. Yes, to me, restoration is not, I get body work frequently because I need it. So I think that's a perfect example. When you have an injury, don't just let it heal. Go to a body worker who can help with healing the tissue, so it doesn't heal in a way which putting more strain on other areas.
Right. I think the mistake, and this is particularly with men, is that we often wait for things to get really bad. We wait till it hits rock bottom, and then we're finally motivated to do something about it. But now, not to say that there isn't anything that can be done, but it's such a more difficult challenge to take on now,
Absolutely.
then just hit it early on. It's like car maintenance, right? You don't wait for your tires to go flat. You check your air pressure every once in a while to make sure that they're all good. You get your car checked out. I think more people probably get their car checked out per year than their own body.
I agree. I think we look after our cars better than we look after our bodies. I agree. I mean, the metaphor I always use is if you're driving your car and the oil light goes on, you don't just put a Band-Aid over the oil light, you take it to the mechanic. When our oil light goes on, when we have a pain somewhere, we have a headache, we have heartburn, we just put a Band-Aid over the oil light. We take PPI for the heartburn, we take a aspirin for the headache, whatever it is, but we don't have it checked out properly. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, but the massages, I started getting a massage once a week, maybe 6 years ago, and I was going to do it as an experiment for maybe a month, but I never stopped. I've been doing it almost every week since then. And what I tell people is that at the end of a intense training week, you've built up a certain level of damage. You may not feel it because it hasn't hit a tipping point.
Yeah.
But when you get a massage, it quells all that damage. It addresses it before it progresses into something more serious. So you're staying ahead of possible injuries. And also you're getting feedback going, okay, you got a little bit more inflammation here than normal. What have you been doing this week? Or your back's tighter than it usually is. You're getting feedback from a professional, and that's huge.
Yeah, if you can find good body workers are fantastic. I think body work does not get the recognition that it should. There's a big range of body workers, some good, some aren't so good, but good body workers are priceless.
What about infrared saunas as a recovery?
I'm a huge fan. Yeah, I have one. I'm a big, we talked about the hormetic effects of exercise, a little stress on your body of exercise. Well, infrared saunas do the same thing. Now, I'm actually a big fan of an infrared sauna, and then I go into either a cold plunge or a cold shower, the extreme temperatures. But I think infrared saunas, there's tons of research on the positive effects of infrared saunas. So, yeah, I actually have one because I think they're so powerful. I'm a big fan. I think as you get older, most of these things become a little, not urgent, but more important because you're looking to maintain. When you're younger, you want to grow and get stronger. When you get older, you're looking to maintain. You want to stay healthy in your 80s, 90s, 100s. You want to enjoy your children, your grandchildren. And I think saunas are one of those things that are, if you have access to them, are incredibly helpful. Yeah. I mean, they help with your they help with your blood pressure, they help with aches and pains, especially if you're working out a lot. They have very positive effects. In fact, some of the effects that we find with saunas, they actually have some similar effects to exercise.
Right. Your body's it's another stress that your body has to work against and get more resilient as a result of it. Yeah, I'm thinking of getting an infrared sauna for the house. Is this something you would use a couple times a week? How often do you use it?
I use it whenever I can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Could you use it every day, or would that be overkill?
You could. I don't know if it's overused, but I use it a couple of times a week. Yeah.
Good deal.
I mean, it may not be necessary to use it every day, but couple of 2, 3, 4 times a week is great. Yeah,
you may not want to use it every day.
I mean, the one thing I would caution with an infrared sauna, because I sweat a lot. I mean, you sweat a lot more than a regular sauna. You just need to replace the fluids because especially as you get older, you don't have that sensitivity to dehydration. You don't realize when you dehydrated. So it's really important to pour in liquids, not sugary liquids like water, maybe with some electrolytes in. But I think that's important. But otherwise, it's very rare that there's a problem with a sauna.
Right. Now let's talk about protein consumption a little bit, because you made an important point that as people get older, you actually need to increase your protein a bit. Now, is that due to just poor digestion? You're not extracting all the amino acids the way you used to?
Well, I think protein is probably the trickiest thing in this whole aging story, because I think I'm all for animal protein, and I was pre-diabetic many years ago, and I became more, I was eating lots of fruits and grains, and I thought I was eating this healthy diet, and I became pre-diabetic. So I switched more to a paleo diet, and I, lost weight, felt great, and my sugars came down. But we know now that too much animal protein can actually stimulate one of the longevity genes, which has a negative effect on aging, the mTOR gene, mechanistic target of rapamycin. So I think as you get older, it's important to maybe cut back some of the animal protein, which is good when you're young and you want to build and get stronger. That's animal protein important because of the amino acid profile, in particular the methionine. As you get older, it's probably good to switch more to plant protein, but also you can have animal protein, but not as much. It may affect it. But as you point out, as you get older, once you get into your 60s and you start losing muscle mass, muscle mass is probably one of the most important factors in aging, because, you see so many, feeble older people, they can't get up from pretty fragile, and part of it is what we call sarcopenia. Same as you get osteopenia and osteoporosis, you get, which is loss of bone, you get sarcopenia, loss of muscle, and that happens as we get older. So it's important, we probably all get enough protein, unless you want to get, build up and muscle train. We probably all get enough protein probably until we're in our 40s and 50s. And if you want to lose weight, if you want to get, put on muscle mass, you can increase your protein. But if not, most of us probably are getting enough protein until probably our 50s and 60s, when we don't want to have the sarcopenia where we're losing muscle mass, because that's a major issue in aging. And so I recommend now, in the old days, I used to have tons of animal protein. Now I have a plant protein. I have a pea protein shake. Like this, I only eat 2 meals a day. I don't eat breakfast. I mainly fast. But like for lunch, I had a pea protein shake. In the old days, I would have had, a steak or some chicken, grass-fed meat or whatever. Now I'll still probably have some animal protein at night, at least 5 times a week, but I'll probably not have animal protein twice a day. I'll have pea protein once, and we add collagen as well, because collagen, especially in collagen from animals too, it doesn't have the high amount of methionine, so it's actually a good protein as you age. So it all depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to put on muscle mass, if you're trying to lose weight, more animal protein is good. If you're trying to not lose muscle mass as you get older, I wouldn't necessarily recommend animal protein. I'd recommend more plant protein. But there's a fine line. If you're going to choose between the two, I think not losing muscle mass is more important than worrying about the animal protein and plant protein.
Yeah, the muscle, just having extra muscle is almost metabolic currency, or not almost, it is metabolic currency. And it's depressing for me to see people that are, let's say, in their 70s and they're just beaten down, because I have this fear of aging where I want to be healthy and resilient as long as possible. I don't necessarily have to lift as heavy as I do right now for the rest of my life, but I want to feel vital and energetic and be active.
Right. But I think, how old are you?
I'm 47.
Yeah, so you're getting to the age where you now want to maintain rather than build. I think, to me, for someone, you at that sort of borderline age where it's not about you need to build more, you just want to maintain what you have. So I think it depends on where you're at in life. But I agree with you. I think, muscle has a lot more function than just, you talked about metabolic currency. Muscle has a lot more function than just helping you walk and lift things.
Right. Let's talk about Alzheimer's disease for a little bit, because I've been affected by that. My mother had dementia towards the end of her life. My grandmother had full-blown Alzheimer. My great-grandmother did. It's such a terrible disease to deal with. It's extremely stressful, obviously, to the person going through it, but it's really stressful for everyone around them. What are some steps that we can take to keep our brains healthy?
Sure. Well, they're usually the same steps that we talk about generally to keep our bodies healthy. Sugar is probably sugar is the devil, period. Sugar is probably the worst toxin that you can put into your body for brain health. So once again, removing sugar and starches as much as possible. So a low carb diet is really important. And you want to feed your brain healthy fats and protein, but stay away from a lot of carbs. Sleep, we talked about, key for brain health. Exercise, key for brain health. Meditation, or being able to deal with the stress. Most of us are stressed, have too much stress in our lives. So learning some type of technique to quiet the mind is really important. And then there are quite a number of supplements that I take, which can be helpful. There's certain mushrooms that are helpful. Curcumin is helpful. I take resveratrol, alpha. So there's supplements that can be helpful. And what I think is actually a really nice thing that most people can do there's a particular gene called the ApoE4 gene that you can get done. You can get cheek swabs at 23andMe do. I mean, we do a specific test here, but even 23andMe does the ApoE3 gene, ApoE4 gene. And you can tell if you have the gene for, I have it. I have a gene for Alzheimer's. My mother also had Alzheimer's. I'm not worried because I hope, because I'm doing all the right lifestyle measures to prevent me from getting Alzheimer's. So just because you have the gene doesn't mean that the gene presents itself with Alzheimer's. It's determined by how you live your life. So knowing, I thought I may have it, but knowing that I have it, I'm just a little bit more careful. I tend to get lazy with exercise, but now I'm less lazy with exercise, and I'll see that I'll either walk or ride or do something. I don't do enough weight training. I really need to do more weight training. I've got, screwed up my wrist, and then I stopped, but I need to get, that's my biggest weakness, but I think exercise in general is really important. But knowing you have the gene makes me sort of, it's a bit more urgent for me to exercise, to sleep, to deal with my stress, to take my supplements, to watch my diet.
I think that's a healthy attitude to interpreting that data as well, because I think some people will see that and they have this fatalistic, oh no, it's inevitable, I'm going to have this. And how much of a role we can play in preventing these things.
No, my point exactly. It can be empowering, or it can be too scary for people. So you need to be the right personality, or you need to explain it to people. So you need to use it as a positive stimulus for, I have terrible genes. We do this really cool gene test, which tells you sort of your weak nutrition areas. I have terrible genes, which I sort of knew. My father died from his third heart attack when he was 54. My brother had a heart attack at 50. My mother had Alzheimer's. So I know I've got all these genes, which is why I got to get my shit together.
Right. What about phosphatidylserine? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I use phosphatidylserine mainly to affect cortisol levels at night. Right. So yeah, when I'm stressed out, I start taking phosphatidylserine, but I actually use it quite a lot in my practice. Personally, I don't use it as much but it's a great brain nutrient. That is I like phosphatidylserine, and in particular, it can really help with stress. And because what happens with stress is you have an increased cortisol at the wrong time. You have it at night instead of during the day. So the phosphatidylserine can help that. So yes, I like phosphatidylserine a lot.
It's great post-workout after an intense training.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
There was a study that showed it improved the testosterone to cortisol ratio. It's a small study, but it sounded.
I like phosphatidylserine. I think there are a lot of interesting supplements. I'm a big fan of supplementation. targeted supplementation, and the genetic tests actually help with. I'm a huge fan.
Right.
You know, I get knocked for pushing supplements. I take a shitload myself. I find them helpful, and I think it's just one part. It's, you know, that you supplement a good diet, and you supplement, you know, eating.
I know you got to go in a minute. You bring up a really interesting story about one of your clients who was dealing with a lot of stress, a lawyer working at a big firm, and you threw everything you could at her, and it wasn't getting her the effects that she wanted. And then she mentioned that she just wants to quit her job, go work for an NGO somewhere, do something more fulfilling. And then you didn't hear from her for a while. And then all of a sudden you hear from her and she said, hey, my life has turned around now. I'm in Uganda. I'm enjoying this line of work. I mean, it's one of those things that's so overlooked that you got to find something that you love doing for a living.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, no matter what else you do is just sugarcoating to a large extent, because if you hate what you do for a living, it's like having a cortisol drip right in you all the time.
I agree. So, you know, what I always say, it's the ordinary things we do on a daily basis that have an extraordinary effect on our health. You know, we're always talking about diet and exercise and sleep, supplements, but it's, you know, these little factors like having gratitude, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, having purpose in life, volunteering, but having meaning and purpose in life is huge. You know, especially a lot of people that I see here in New York City are stressed out. They hate their jobs, and they feel like they have these golden handcuffs. They can't leave their jobs because they're making a good living, but it's affecting their health negatively. And she was a perfect example. We tried everything to help her. It didn't help. And I threw my hands up and I said, just why don't you go work for a nonprofit? And I never heard from her until later, and when she emailed me and thanking me, and I said it out of frustration.
Yeah.
And I've seen that often. I see that so often when people have meaning and purpose in their life. And it doesn't mean you have to go and work for a nonprofit. And can be your own kids. It can be whatever you do and love to do. For you, it's probably all this work you're doing. That is very powerful. To me, it's more powerful than anything else. I think that these intangible factors like learning to forgive, having gratitude, being kind, are, you know, having a sense of humor, being able to laugh at yourself and not taking yourself so seriously. These are really important issues in how healthy we are and how well we age.
Yeah. I think we all have to take whatever adversity we've dealt with and flip it into a positive. So if you've been through abuse, help people that are going through abuse. If you've dealt with poverty, help people that are dealing with poverty. Otherwise, it's just overwhelming. And there's a lot of nonprofits I like to support. And one of the reasons is because I want to feel like I'm doing something about these issues. I don't want to just read about human trafficking and go, oh, that's terrible. I feel bad for those kids. And then I just go on with my day. You know, I want to do something more impactful to that. Otherwise, it's stressful. I think a lot of people are stressed just because they have this feeling of powerlessness, not just with their own lives, but most people are very empathetic. You know, they realize when they see someone else suffer, where most of us are automatically empathetic. We feel bad for the person. We want to help them. We want to alleviate their pain. But sometimes you're just so overwhelmed. And then sometimes your health is at such a deteriorated state that you barely have enough energy to take care of yourself. You know,
no, absolutely. No, and Americans in particular, you know, I come from South Africa, but Americans in particular are very giving. And, you know, what I've seen, you know, I work very closely with a nonprofit in South Africa. And, you know, and I see this all the time with people who volunteer. You actually get more positive result. It helps you more than the people you're actually helping. When you give without expecting anything in return, you're getting so much more for your, it's helping you more. Obviously, you're helping others, and that's fantastic. But most people don't realize that they're actually getting even more than they're giving, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I was at the Cosmopolitan a little while ago, one of the nicer casinos out here, and I was picking up my car at valet. And I was looking for a bill to give to the valet person. Usually I give $5 or so. All I had were 20s though. So I'm like, I'll just give her a 20 because I'm in a hurry right now. And that made her day. She was so
Sure.
appreciative of that. And I go, that's all it took was $20 to make someone's day.
Sure.
So now I like to over tip because a lot of these small businesses are suffering. I go, not only am I going to support them, I'll just over tip as well because I can do it. And people are so appreciative of that.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely.
Little things like that. You can improve the quality of life of others with just your daily action.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, this has been great. I really appreciate all your time. The New Rules of Aging Well, available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. What about, everywhere. Where can people find out more about you, though? What's your website?
Just go to drfranklipman.com, drfranklipman.com. Sign up. We've got a free newsletter. I put out a newsletter every week with a lot of great information. I'm on Twitter. I put a lot of interesting articles and interesting tidbits on Twitter as well. Is it Dr. Frank Lipman? I'm on Instagram. I don't really do my Instagram, but just go to the website, drfranklipman.com.
So for people who live in New York City or the tri-state area, if they're looking to hire you for your services.
Yeah, and we do virtual now. Now we're doing virtual as well, which is great, we're seeing people from all over the world, which I love doing.
Yeah.
Great. So where things have changed, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. We just have to adapt with it
exactly. Yeah.
There's always opportunities no matter what's going on. You have to see it that way as opposed to this doom and gloom that we hear every day. Well, hey, this has been fantastic. Let me hit stop recording, make sure we don't